On the Microsoft Azure Management Portal, the URL is manage.windowsazure.com. We've gone ahead and we've created a new website. If you're new to how to do that, go ahead and see our previous video on creating and publishing a website to Microsoft Azure. We've created a new one called MVS Test, and you can see that Azure has assigned that to the site URL of mvstest.azurewebsites.net. And if we click on that, you can see that is up and running. We've published a basic MVC website up there, just changing this header. And so you get a couple things with that. You get this free, I'm on the free plan here, so we've got the free HTTP URL, but they also give you the HTTPS access. So you do get a secure connection to your site using even the free plan that we're set up with. So let's go take a look at that. If we go over to scale, and if that's all I wanted to do, if I'm okay with using the URL that they've assigned to me, I can keep this in the free tier. Now, certainly there's other implications to that as far as you're in a shared hosting environment and things along those lines. But once I decide that I need to use a custom domain name for my site, I either have to go to the shared, the basic, or the standard. So in this case, we're going to move this up to the shared. So you'll need to go to scale, switch that to shared, and then save your change. Anytime you're making a change on Azure that's going to cost you money, you will get prompted to confirm it. And this will just take a second or so, and now we're on the shared plan. So if we go back to the dashboard, now let's look at what we need to do from a DNS side of things in order to have this site URL change over to the custom site that we want to use, and we'll do that in the next section. Alright, so now that we've updated our web hosting plan to shared, so it does support custom domain names, we're going to look at what we need to do on the GoDaddy side of things in order to use an existing domain that we have, mastervs.com, and point that over to this new Azure site. So in order to do that, if we go to the Configure tab of our website and we scroll down, you can see right here we've got the option to manage domains, and the only domain that is currently assigned to our website is the one that was assigned by Azure when we created our new website with that name. If we go into manage domains, there's a bunch of verbiage up here about the CNAMEs we need to create and how we tell Azure that it's okay for them to host the domain name that we're asking for. So if we go over here currently and we enter in our information about the domain, it's going to come back and tell us that the CNAME records aren't created and the IP address doesn't point to the correct URL. So why don't we correct those first? But one thing we will need is this IP address right here. So we're going to copy that. And I'm over in the GoDaddy Manage Domains, and I'm looking at mastervs.com. And let's see what we need to do in order to set this up for Azure to appropriately host the site that we're pointing over to. So this is what it currently points to based on the GoDaddy. That's what they just assigned me when I think it's on cache parking currently. So if we edit this record, and we would want to change this to point to the IP address, there we go, that was assigned to us by Azure when we created the new website. So that's the first piece. Now the second thing they're looking for is CNAMEs to show that we actually own and can control this domain name. So we've got a couple CNAME records that we need to create, and those are done by clicking on the Add Record, and that should give us a pop-up. Here you want to pick CNAME, and Azure uses this concept of AW verify records, Azure website, I suppose, verify. And so what we want to do here is put in a new CNAME record that is going to point back to a value that they'll know that this was created specifically to verify that we own the domain and that they should host it when we point over to it. So the first thing we'll do is create AW verify. That'll be the name of the new C record. And then what we want this to point to is AW verify, the name of our site that we created on Azure, master, let's just go simplest way to do this, AW verify mastervstest.azurewebsites.net. So this is, you want to take this value right from here, copy that, and put that into what we're pointing to. And then we'll So that's the first one we want to add. If we say finish, so now we've updated the IP address, we've added the AW verify CNAME record, and let's go ahead and save those changes. Make sure you save. If you don't, it's going to be very frustrating because you're going to think you did everything right, and if you're down here and you don't see that notification, it's easy to miss. So now if we come back here to Azure and we type in that we'd like to use the mastervs.com, Azure's going to go out, query the DNS, and sure enough, it actually found the records that it needed, so we can now use that. So that's step one. Now we also want to add the www. So if somebody types in www.mastervs.com, we can have that site also hosted here. Now in some cases, you're going to want to have just the www redirect over to the naked domain name or vice versa. In this case, we're going to add both. So if we click the check mark, it'll give us the opportunity to add a second one. So now we need to jump back over and create another CNAME for the hosting of the second record. So we will do another CNAME record. In this case, we want to do an AW verify.www. And if we go back over here, we can see that they're telling us again we want to point that to AW verify yourdomain.com, which is, let's see if they gave me one that I can copy and paste. No, they didn't, but we can essentially take this same value, copy that, bring it over here, and we want it to point to, I believe, there we go, same thing. We can use that. Finish. And we will save those changes. All right, so now let's try that one, www.mastervs.com. Click OK. This should update in just a minute. And now we've got these three domains that we can access the same site through. So let's go back over to dashboard. Now the other thing is this will update the dashboard to point your URL to now directly to your naked domain once we go in here. So we could click on this. There's our Azure domain. We can also go to mastervs.com, same site, and we can go to www. So there you go. Just like that, we've got the website up, we've assigned a custom domain name to it, and we've routed both our naked domain name and our www over to the new Azure site. Now, one other thing I want to point out here that you may run into, in this case, these went very smooth, but in some cases, you're going to think you did everything right. You're going to set up the IP address correctly. The CNAMEs are going to be set up correctly. You're going to go into Azure, and it's just going to still tell you that it can't find the records that it needs. Generally speaking, that's going to be a DNS propagation issue where the records that you've created have been created, but because of caching that goes on as far as DNS pointers, it's still pointing at the old address. And part of that is when I was putting together these videos, I made sure that before I tried it from the portal, I had those IP addresses forwarded correctly and the CNAME set up. I've been in scenarios where I've tried to do it first, kind of half and half, do some in Azure and then jump over to GoDaddy and set up those records, and it will take an hour or so for that to propagate. So keep that in mind. The other thing I wanted to show you was just a quick site. If we go to here it is, what's my DNS.net. If you do have a question as far as if it has propagated out yet, one thing you could look at is a site like this. If you put in www.mastervs.com and we can say search, and it'll show you where all different parts of the world are currently pointing to for that DNS record. And it looks to me like these have all propagated out correctly, and we can check that for A records or for our CNAME records. So same thing. These are all, the www are all pointing back to MasterVS as they should be. and your A name record, that's the one where the IP address record needs to point at the new site that's up on Azure. So if you still see those records in here, don't worry too much. Just give it an hour or so for its time to live to trigger, and then that'll get cleared out of the cache. Go make yourself a sandwich, come back in an hour, and you should be good. I just wanted to point that out because I know that that's been a point of frustration for myself and some of the other folks that I've talked to. So that's a quick little tool that I find helpful to see that I've set